Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next Leadership Conference webinar. Today, we will be on the topic of artificial intelligence. I remember artificial intelligence in movies back in the 80s and 90s. Things like Max Headroom or Terminator. And now it seems as if life is imitating art. And our speaker is one of the best on the planet. My name is Josh Marty, and I am the past chair of the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce and current chairman of a company, Point Inside, local to Bellevue, who is an indoor mapping company. Before we get started today, I wanted to take a moment to talk about the Chamber. If you are not a member, the Chamber is a gateway to the Eastside civic leaders, educational programming, visibility, promotional opportunities, and community service. To find out more, make sure you click on the pop-up on the lower left-hand corner. I'm really excited about today's conversation because I met Gurdeep a couple years ago while working on autonomous vehicles for the construction industry. And it was clear that I was out of my element within just a few steps of entering any room that he was in. So I hope you enjoy today's webinar. And now I'd like to hand things off to Joe Fain, President and CEO of Bellevue Chamber, and he will update us on what's happening.
Thank you, Josh. Really appreciate you taking the time to be on this morning and to help us kick off today's program. We are really excited to have so many folks joining us here this morning for, I believe, our 8th program. Again, Josh was a past board president last year and has continued to be a big supporter of the Bellevue Chamber in really big ways. As I said, it's the 8th program in our summer series featuring the top minds focused on the future of work. But our Future of Work conference isn't the only virtual program available through the Bellevue Chamber. Yesterday, we were joined by Washington Federal CEO Brent Beardall as he walked us through the mid-year economic forecast. Brent's presentation, along with all of our previous webcasts, are available on demand. You can go ahead and click on the link on your screen or visit bellevuechamber.org at any time to view any of the 2 or 3 dozen programs that we've done since the beginning of COVID. And next Wednesday, King County Assessor John Arthur Wilson will join us to discuss property taxes, how our business is affected by COVID-19, and the road to recovery. This is a great program. We hope that you'll join us. And again, go ahead and click the link up on your screen to register anytime. Don't forget to post on social media during your experiences here on the Future of Work Leadership Conference by tagging at Bellevue Chamber with any of the posts that you'll be making to Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn throughout the program. We will randomly select one poster to win a free promotional opportunity for their organization or product during next week's webcast. In fact, you can see the banner ads on your screen for one of our previous week's winners. So start posting or use the link on your screen that just popped up to get started automatically. This summer, we ran our first virtual Young Entrepreneurs program. The month-long virtual program teaches middle and high school age students how to start a business, from ideation, developing a business plan, to pitching their idea to a panel of seasoned investors through our virtual Shark Tank. The program typically runs a year, but we've been doing this this faster 1-month version, and so it's been a lot of fun. Adapting to the needs of new technologies, and so we've been gathering students not just locally, but really from all over the United States. And it's been so exciting that we're going to go ahead and kick off another program this fall. So click the link on your screen for more information and to let us know that you are interested. I'd also like to thank our sponsors who are generously supporting this program. Our prime sponsor, of course, is Amazon. They are going to be coming to Bellevue in a big way in the next few years, and we're excited to have their leadership, both on our board of directors as well as in supporting this program. We also want to thank our major sponsors, AT&T, Microsoft, Puget Sound Energy, King County, and the City of Bellevue. Our corporate sponsors, Falco Salt and the Port of Seattle, and our associate sponsors, ACES Northwest Network and the University of Washington. Finally, I'd like to recognize our growing list of virtual conference table captains. We're excited to recognize ARVR Studio, GMI, Her Interactive, Accelerate, Seattle Children's, AAA Washington, HDR, the Partners Group, and Sweeney Conrad. For information on bringing your team this recognition and benefits, please contact us. Before we get going, I want to remind you that this is an interactive program that thrives on your participation. Today's presenter will be taking questions at the conclusion of his remarks, so fill out those chat boxes or use the Q&A feature on your screen under the chat tab to get started in the conversation. Thank you. At this point, I want to go ahead and welcome in one of our great board members who has joined us to do an introduction for our speaker today. So please welcome Sue DeFlorio.
Thank you, Joe, and good morning. I'm Sue DeFlorio with General Microsystems, or GMI. We're an IT solutions company focusing on the hardware, software, and security needed to run complex computing environments. You may know us as your Bellevue neighbor for over 35 years. And today, I'm excited to announce, and you are among the very first to know, that GMI has become global market innovators. As a continued commitment to the growth and scalability needed to support our customers' complex IT, GMI is merging with Envision Networking and Extreme Integration, both of Phoenix. While our new headquarters will be located in Phoenix, the Bellevue team is here and ready to serve your needs. And with that, I have the extreme honor of introducing our speaker. Gurdeep Singh Pall is the Corporate Vice President for AI at Microsoft and a member of the Technology and Research Leadership Team. He is an entrepreneur, a product thinker, but foremost, a passionate technologist. Gurdeep Pall leads the Business AI Group at Microsoft, a team comprised of research scientists, engineers, and business leaders, bringing digital transformation to business tasks through the power of AI, including a recent effort to train autonomous systems with reinforced learning efficiency. He is also responsible for Microsoft Garage and Hackathon, a hyperscale grassroots innovation program. Prior to this, Gurdeep was responsible for Skype, Skype for Business, and Microsoft Teams, including starting Link, now Skype for Business, and developing it into a multi-billion-dollar business. Gurdeep's favorite technology moment was demonstrating the world's first live real-time spoken language translation within a Skype call at the Code Conference in 2014. Today, we're so happy he's joined our chamber event. Gurdeep?
Thank you so much. Great to be here. Good morning to everyone. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm gonna go ahead and switch to the slides and start my talk on advances in artificial intelligence. AI is a fascinating topic, and you're probably hearing about it a lot, and for good reason. What I'm here to tell you is that all our lives are going to be transformed completely with what is happening and what is really going to just accelerate all over in our lives very, very shortly. So let me start by talking about sort of the history of the Earth and about life. Earth is 5.7 billion years ago old or something like that. But something interesting happened about 500 million years ago. And that period is called the Cambrian period. And in that period, scientists have observed that suddenly these microorganisms, which are fairly, for lack of a better word, dumb, suddenly started becoming quite intelligent. And there's been a lot of debate back and forth on why did they become intelligent in that period. And the leading theory is that these microorganisms develop the ability, a single cellular ability to see. Because once these organisms, which are just basically, imagine just randomly moving around in water, moment they could see, whichever organism could see could find food much faster. It could avoid predators quite easily. And that started the development of what is known as the biological brain, because just the ability to see now started wiring the brain. And what I'm about to tell you is that life and human life is going to go through an AI acceleration now, which is akin to the Cambrian acceleration 500 million years ago. So, what does that mean? Um, Probably the best metaphor I could use is that we are seeing the fourth industrial revolution, which has started already. And that is because of AI. And like each of the industrial revolutions before, the steam engine revolution 250 years ago, which started the industrial revolution, then the electricity, which is about 150 years ago, came and transformed life. And then, fairly relatively recently, about 50 years ago, with the microprocessor and the computer starting to really become pervasive, we've seen what our life has become today. I mean, we can't live without Wi-Fi. We can't live without smartphones. And now we are really in the era of artificial intelligence. And like each one of those, this is going to transform society. It is going to transform politics. It is going to transform the way we think, the way we live. Everything is going to change. So then the question is, why now? What is special about now? Well, to answer that question, you have to go back about 50 years or so. This is a gentleman called Gordon Moore. He worked at Intel, and he wrote something called the Moore's Law. You've probably heard of Moore's Law. Moore's Law, there are a couple of different definitions of it, but roughly says that every 2 years or so, you'll double the amount of transistors which can be there on a computer chip. So, so in 1995, when right in your backyard, Windows 95 shipped from Microsoft, a computer chip had 5 million transistors on it. Now, 5 million is about the population of greater New York City area. Because of Moore's Law, 10 years later, a computer chip basically had enough transistors as sort of western part of United States. Another 5 years or so later, we crossed 1 billion transistors on a computer chip. Thanks to Moore's Law, you keep doubling the way I was saying. And in 2015, there was enough transistors as many transistors on a computer chip as there are humans on the earth. And this continued to a point where we have now, just 2 years after that, 2x the number of transistors as human beings. And now we've gotten to the point, coming back to the slide, we've gotten to the point where Moore's Law is going to officially end. And in fact, Gordon Moore, who's a fairly elderly gentleman, he made a statement that in the next few years, Moore's Law will end. That means that we will not be able to get any more transistors on a computer chip. And the reason for that is that the wires of the computer chip are now only 3 or 4 atoms width wide. And you cannot have a wire which is smaller than an atom. So we are coming to the end of Moore's Law. And that is why you will hear people talk about quantum computing, because when atomic particles are not enough, you have to go subatomic. But quantum computing is a fascinating topic, which is a totally different talk altogether. It is also going to have fundamental
Gurdeep, just really quick, just to let you know, if you have slides up, we're not able to see them. So we just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, not a problem.
Shared. That is very strange. I'm going to share my entire screen and we'll go from there. Can you see my screen now?
No.
I'm going to stop sharing and try again. Sorry, I was talking to a bunch of slides.
Well, Wouldn't have known it. Everybody, I think, was following along just fine, which is why some of us were wondering whether or not the slides were even up. But it looks like they're loading as we speak. So sorry for the interruption.
Can you see them now?
No, but you can just continue with your presentation if they're unable to bring them up.
Sorry about that. So the gist of the story, I think the talk is quite visual, but the gist of the story is that it is because of the advancements in computer density, is that a whole new form of computer science, which is artificial intelligence, has really suddenly become possible. So what is artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is the ability for computers to have perception the way humans have perception. It is the ability for computers to be able to learn the way humans learn, to reason the way humans reason, and to speak and to understand human language. And that basically gets to the core of neuroscience. And what we are starting to see is the development of artificial intelligence, which is mimicking human intelligence as closely as possible and heavily inspired by it. Now, if you were seeing my slides, what I'm showing right now is basically the human brain and the neurons inside the human brain. This is a fascinating.
Your slides are up, by the way. Thank you.
Oh, okay, good. So if you see the slide, we're looking at the human brain, and what you're seeing inside the human brain is really the neurons. And these neurons are basically networks of these units in the brain, which are able to store some information, and they organize themselves to give us intelligence. And it was only about 150 years or so ago that there was a Spanish scientist who actually actually cut slices of the brain, and he was able to look at them inside a microscope, and he was able to see that this is what the neurons look like, and he actually drew it out. This is hand drawn based on what he was seeing inside the microscope. Well, it turns out that the new artificial intelligence that everybody's talking about nowadays, which is called deep learning, actually is quite similar to the neurons that are there inside the human brain. And instead of neurons, you basically have these network of these units, which we call artificial neurons as well. And they're connected with each other. And there is an input and there is an output. If the input is a picture of a cat, the output will say this is a cat. And it is through this network of self-organizing neurons is that how we get in artificial intelligence. It's pretty similar to how you got natural intelligence. On the left, you will see the structure of a typical neuron. You have a nucleus, you have a synapse, there's a terminal, and you can see this little connection between these two cells. In artificial neuron, what you see is a mathematical equation. So on one side is the biological neuron, on the right is the mathematical equation. And this is sort of the core of why we are seeing advancements in artificial intelligence. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but let me share with you a few breakthroughs. There was an amazing gentleman called Alan Turing who lived about 70 years ago. You could say that today, while we are living in a free society, can be attributed at least partly to Alan Turing, because during World War II, Alan Turing broke the Enigma code that was being used by Germany to encrypt their war messages. And Alan Turing was a British scientist, absolute genius, and he's largely considered the father of computer science. And he's also considered the father of artificial intelligence. In fact, the Nobel Prize of Computer Science is called the Turing Award. It's given to one person or one small team every year. So Alan Turing basically laid out a bunch of benchmarks and said, if we cross this benchmark, we you will not be able to tell whether it's a human being or a machine on the other end. And the benchmarks were everything from speech to vision and so on. So what happened in the last 4 years at Microsoft, and some of these benchmarks were broken in my team itself. In 2016, in Microsoft Research, we were able to surpass human ability to detect objects. So imagine a test that is set up so that humans are trying to, they look at a picture and they identify objects, and a computer is looking at that same picture. So the computer exceeded the human ability to see objects. In 2017, a computer surpassed human ability to recognize speech. So basically, imagine there's a transcription happening of somebody speaking. The computer was able to transcribe better than humans. Similarly, about 2 years ago in my team, we surpassed the ability for a computer to read a book and answer questions more than a human being. It matched, and now it has exceeded the ability. We call it reading comprehension. Translation, we way surpassed human ability to translate between languages. And then now we're able to speak as good or better than human beings with computers. Now, some of these are not there, in Alexa or whatever thing you use today, because partly, it does require a lot of compute and so on. But my point is that we have, in the last few years, we have surpassed what Alan Turing laid out as sort of the key benchmarks for recognizing human intelligence. So this painting was actually done by an artificial intelligence system. So this artificial intelligence system was shown a lot of paintings and said, now you paint. And it came up with these paintings. Both of them are done by AI. Today, AI is composing symphonies. It's writing books. And what I'm showing at the bottom is a mathematical equation, which is basically deciding how a painting like this should be done. In other words, that all this genius that is there inside a human brain can now be represented in mathematical equations, which is really the core of AI. In this case, an artificial intelligence network was asked to transfer the style of Van Gogh by looking at Van Gogh paintings, and then we showed it a picture of a dog and said, now do this in how would Van Gogh do this? And on the left, you could see that the artificial intelligent network actually produced that painting of the dog as if Van Gogh would have done it. And these things just continue. Here you have a game called Pac-Man, which some of you might remember if you're as old as me. But what you may not remember is that if you follow the score at the bottom right of the screen, that score is going to get to a point where it's going to roll over. Because for the first time, and this was also in my team about 2 years ago, a computer was able to beat Pac-Man. And this is a score of about 1 million is the highest score you can get to. And the Pac-Man folks who built this app had never seen that score because humans had only gotten to 30,000. And this was 1 million, and you could see the game rolls over. So all this is starting to happen. It's starting to appear in our lives. And I want to show you a video, which hopefully you'll be able to see and hear. Let me know if you don't. Sorry, I'm playing it again. Can you hear that?
I think we were only able to hear it over your microphone.
Sorry, trying to increase the volume so.
I'm loading it through YouTube.
Hi, can you guess where I live?
¿Te encuentras en América del Norte?
Yes. Do you live in central Mexico?
Sí. ¿Te encuentras en Estados Unidos de América?
Yes. Do you live in a capital city?
Sí. ¿Estás cerca de Seattle?
You're very close to Seattle. Are you in Mexico City?
Sí. ¿Estás en Tacoma?
Yes. Very good guess.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Do you like living in Mexico City?
¿Te gusta vivir en la Ciudad de México?
Aquí está muy lindo.
Here is very nice.
What do you do for fun?
¿Qué haces para divertirte?
Voy a las playas de México.
I'm going to the beaches of Mexico.
I like to swim.
Me gusta nadar.
A mí también.
Me too.
Where in the world do you wish to travel?
¿A dónde en el mundo te gustaría viajar?
A Rusia.
To Russia.
¿Y tú?
And you?
Everywhere.
Sería increíble algún día verte en México.
It would be amazing to see you someday in Mexico.
I would really like to visit you sometime.
Me gustaría mucho visitarte algún día.
A mí también.
Me too.
Great. I think you played it from your side, which worked out great. Can you back to my slides? Can you see my slides now?
No.
So I'm going to go back and share them again. Can you see my slides now?
Nope. There they are.
Okay. So I wanted to share that video with you because it talks about real-time translation from one language to the other, and not only understanding what the speaker is saying, being able to translate a different language and then speak it out loud. And you saw two sets of kids, one in Tacoma, one in Mexico, actually talking to each other, having a conversation. So this is considered a very, very, very complex achievement, just that video, and that was a few years ago. What we are starting to see with AI now, that it is going to come into our lives in a fairly broad way. I think we're all starting to see, many people are living the world of Alexa, but it's going to go into a lot of business scenarios like customer support, getting a lot more intelligent. We're moving to a place where now computers with many, many different cameras and sensors can start detecting what is happening in the physical world and what we call reality, being able to compute reality in the same way humans are able to spatially and temporally understand reality. We're starting to see AI assisting professionals, whether it be doctors, whether it be finding legal documents, whether fintech is all about financial based trading. We're starting to see that happen everywhere, where computers are now understanding documents and finding knowledge, which is very important for businesses because a lot of the enterprise wisdom actually lives inside of documents, and humans can't even find it, and there's so much of it. And then we're really starting to see autonomous systems. Everyone is talking about self-driving cars, but self-driving cars is a very, very hard problem. I think we will see it in our lives. I certainly drive a Tesla, and I'm Many times I will actually go into the self-driving mode. But it's not just about cars. Autonomous systems is about anything that is automated today. And as you know, most of manufacturing is automated, is going to become autonomous. And the biggest difference between automated and autonomous is that in automated systems, things are very fragile. They have to be set up exactly right. Otherwise, you will not get the right results. In an autonomous system, the autonomous system is able to adapt to minor changes and still accomplish the task. So imagine that if there is a car coming on a train on a chain assembly chain, and there is a robotic hand which is screwing in the handle of the car. If that was off by a few micrometers, the robotic hand will either put the handle in the wrong the robotic machine will either put the handle in the wrong place, or it is going to stop and it's going to require human intervention to come in and fix that. That is the kind of problem that autonomous systems can fix, because these systems are fundamentally more intelligent. And this is everywhere. We talked about looking at spaces and making sense of spaces. Here, I'm going to play a little video clip. There's no audio in this, so you should be able to see it, which basically is saying how, using AI, we are actually simulating the real world so that you can accomplish many different tasks. And what you see here is a simulation of an indoor space. And in the bottom windows, you're seeing what the amount of processing that we're able to do against a simulation. So imagine a virtual world and virtual eyes inside the virtual world, looking at the virtual world and learning things about it. So here you have a space, and there's people standing around in the lobby. You can go ahead and modify it because it's all synthetic. With a few clicks, you've changed the scene, and as you change the scene, now suddenly there's nobody there, and now you can increase the number of people there. And the point is that if you can do this, you can now train AI systems very easily to understand spaces and time. So, if you're trying to figure out, like, inside the Bellevue Mall, when do people come, when do people leave, where do people hang out, you can not only train models to understand that, you can run a whole bunch of contrafactual reasoning to say what would happen if we opened the mall at midnight, and you can have that kind of scenarios play out. So this is an example of AI being applied to what we call ambient intelligence. This next scenario is also very interesting. In this case, we are training drones to inspect power lines. And in order to train drones to inspect power lines, you have to fly lots of drones. And unfortunately, flying drones, is very expensive. Trying to get them to train to do a particular task is very expensive, because they will either run into trees or they will run into power lines and crash. So in this case, we've created a completely virtual environment in which a drone is flying in a totally made-up world, but the drone actually has cameras which are also virtual. So the virtual cameras flying in a virtual world are learning how to do things in the real world. So that once the AI is trained to do power line inspection, you can now take that brain from which is being trained, and you can put it on a real drone, and it can now go to power line inspection for you. And these things have real consequences. I mean, the fires that happened in Southern California a few years ago were just amazing. I mean, they devastated an entire region, and also, like, from an economy perspective. So now you can have drones which don't need to sleep. They can inspect during day or night. There's another very interesting scenario which has to do with wind turbines. This is another fascinating problem. Inspecting wind turbines. I mean, wind turbine would be the size of, if you look at this picture on the right, you see this little thing there. That would be like the size of a human standing on a wind turbine. And you have to inspect them, because if you don't inspect them, these expensive things, can actually start failing. So, we said, how can we train inspection of wind turbines with AI? And we, again, created a simulated environment as part of the autonomous systems work that we do in my group, to to basically create a simulation of wind turbines. And now, in that simulation, you can now train a drone, a virtual drone, to fly in the virtual world, to learn how to inspect wind turbines. And once it has learned how to do that, you can now put it on a real drone and have it inspect real wind turbines. So, this is a fascinating area because particularly, in the context of COVID, and the world that we're living in, what is becoming very clear is that we will have to accelerate autonomous systems because things will have to continue even if humans are not able to do certain tasks, whether that be in logistics, whether that be in manufacturing, whether that be in safety support infrastructure. And we're starting to see this really, really take off, where previously people were worried about autonomous systems and are they going to impact people's jobs and so on and so forth. Now there is that this may be necessary for us to continue our way of living if you're going to go have these autonomous systems. So in this case, just the last slide on this one, on the wind turbine, you can see a virtual drone inside a virtual environment flying, seeing in this little window, and inspecting in the virtual environment, which can then, of course, be used in the real world. So, so AI is no longer, something that is, academic. AI is not, anything that is just applied to, forecasting or prediction and those kind of tasks. It is now becoming pervasive in the world around us. In fact, if you see what is happening with COVID and the response to COVID across the world by the scientific community, I would say that majority of the breakthroughs and the acceleration in the discovery of vaccines and finding out things like immune responses is happening on the back of AI today. One of the hard problems with AI is that you need a lot of data, and the data has to be collected in a very robust way. But that is, once the data is there, it's really we're bringing to bear the might of AI to find a solution to a really, really human problem. So, I wanted to give you a smattering of, different views into what artificial intelligence is. But at the end of the day, AI is something that it's not a superpower that lives outside of human beings. This superpower is going to be in the service of human beings. And therefore, you have to be really, really principled in how you think about advancing AI. And here, one of the things I'm very proud of for the work we've done at Microsoft is to take a very ethical stance for AI. For the first time in my career, I'm a technologist. About 2 years ago, I had an ethicist and an economist reporting to me, because we were looking at AI not just as a, wow, what can AI do, but more like how can we bring this into the world in a very, very ethical way. For example, AI must be designed to assist humanity. AI must be designed for intelligent privacy. I mean, this is a super important thing for human beings. AI must be transparent. AI must guard against bias. It should not propagate the bias that humans have. Ideally, it should solve for it. AI must maximize efficiency without destroying dignity of people. Very, very important. And this is where some of the implications, which are there about AI being the fourth industrial revolution, really start becoming very important. And lastly, AI needs to be, understandable and accountable. That means that it cannot go rogue. And I know this is one of the big fears people have with artificial intelligence, but it's something that you have to approach very thoughtfully. And I think this is something that we've been doing. And to me, the most important thing, and I'm going to play another video. I hope it plays, or we can load up and play this video again. Show how with AI every day we are tackling some problems humanity has faced forever but never had a solution for. And this is an example of finding a solution with AI for somebody with Parkinson's. So I'm going to try and play this, and otherwise, we'll do the same thing and try and get the video uploaded.
Right, I'm going to try and replicate this here. We're off to a great start. I tend to kind of just avoid doing sketching and writing
Are we
now.
doing it
because
separately?
It's not really worth it if you get something like that.
Yes, we are.
Anything you could do that would just make my hand do what I want it to do and to be able to sign my name would be an incredible thing.
How do we even just begin to help her overcome this particular symptom of her tremors and helping her be able to regain her writing ability, her drawing ability? You know, I don't think we're ever going to get that back 100%. You know, my challenge is it's immense.
Someone's made a spoon, it actually counteracts the tremors you get from Parkinson's. So the spoon actually vibrates in opposition to how your hand might be shaking, and therefore it is steady.
I'm making a very rough prototype. And what this board does is I can connect into it through these wires, these tiny coin cell motors. So these motors will vibrate. Hello.
Hi, I'm Alison. It's affecting something. I don't quite know what's happening. Something is going on with it.
What this is doing is it's short-circuiting whatever feedback loop there is between the brain and the hand that's causing the tremors. I'm on to something, right? I'm on to something.
Woo! Woo! Jesus Christ.
Oh my God.
It makes me forget that I have a tremor. I haven't drawn one of them for a long time. I'm so passionate about it. Yeah, I'm just going to draw a straight line. I've actually just written my name for like the first time in ages.
I can't believe it.
Mum, it's called the Emma.
Oh, brilliant.
It's got my name on it.
So back to the slide. I wanted to end my presentation with that AI it's an incredible capability that is going to be there in every aspect of our life. And I fundamentally believe that it is going to make our life a lot better. And it's going to allow humans not only to live better, but to focus their unique abilities, not in doing repetitive tasks, but truly in the higher cerebral tasks which we've been given. So I'll end my talk there. Sorry for the technical difficulties, but I'm happy to answer some questions. I'll stop sharing.
That was an amazing presentation. It was a great video to end on. So thank you so much for sharing with that. We've got a lot of great questions that are coming in on both the chat and the Q&A. So we've got a little over 12 or 13 minutes to go through some good questions. So again, I'd encourage folks to put their questions in the chat. I'm just going to start with an interesting one that that popped up here from Shannon at Bellevue College. She asks, how should the college and other educational institutions be preparing students both for the possible disruption, but as well as the possible great opportunities of AI?
That is a fantastic question. I think that whether in every student today who's finishing high school or going into college, they must go through a core curriculum which is related to artificial intelligence. You don't have to be a computer scientist to do AI, because you can understand AI, you can understand how it works, you can understand how it can be applied, and you can understand all the different implications of AI, whether it be related to, if you're in the legal discipline, you have to understand, okay, what are the upcoming new challenges that we're going to have because of AI? If a self-driving car hits another self-driving car, whose fault is it? Which insurance company is going to pay for it? If a AI algorithm, discriminates against somebody because the data it was trained with was not representative of the population, and it perpetuated a bias, whose accountability is that? So I think that in every discipline, we have to incorporate aspects of AI, implications of AI. And if you are really into science and math, I would say this is probably one of the most important disciplines that you could go into. I believe that in the next 10 years, we will not need computer programmers because AI is going to be writing programs, which means that, even this old idea that, let's go teach everybody programming because that's very relevant, is not going to be relevant 10 years from now. So I think it's a great question. I think designing a curriculum, which is everything about the ethics of AI, the history of AI, the implications of AI, and the actual science of AI, depending on where which branch or study a student is on, I think is very, very important. I would almost make it a necessary component of any education. I've been seeing some of the schools in Seattle area, and they're starting to, even at high school level, starting to bring in classes which are related to AI and the upcoming implications of that. Hopefully that helps.
It's great. I as you're talking about that and the implications and no computer programmers in the next 10 years and things like that, I have to think about and ask about the issue of disruption, not just economic disruption, but really the changing human evolution. And I kind of relate it back to, I used to drive quite a bit, and it was before I had a phone that had my GPS and told me everywhere to go, and I could easily drive from point A to point B without getting lost. And now I find that unless I've turned my map on and have my GPS on my phone, I will, completely get lost on where I'm going. And the way I use technology has really changed the way my brain works. So with so many different and very complex tasks being able to be done through AI, how do you envision that changing, human evolution itself?
I think it's going to have profound implications on that, and I'll share one analog with you. If you look at the pyramids, the pyramids were built by somebody hauling massive pieces of stone and rock, and and putting them up there, and they were actually humans who did it. And I tell you, those humans, they were definitely a lot stronger than I am, and today, fortunately, humans don't need to do that. One, we don't miss doing that. I'm sure I've lost some ability in my strength and so on and so forth. But today, that is not a necessary function for me. And you could argue that we are already evolving away from the way humans were when they had to carry rocks up the thing. And I think in the same way, you will see humanity evolve. It is going to. I think that we will end up in a world where humans will live in a very symbiotic way with AI. I still believe AI will be in the service of humans, but humans will be able to delegate a lot of these repetitive tasks to AI so that they can focus on things that are truly only humans can do. And I think that's the world that we are headed towards. It does make you somewhat reliant, and you have to wonder about, are we too reliant? But that is, I leave that to philosophers and thinkers. But it's one of those things where, are we too reliant on cranes and bulldozers today? We probably are. Not something that we actively think about, and we, that, hey, let's plan a world where we live without bulldozers and cranes. But it's kind of like that. just to give you a rough analogy.
That's a great analogy that really puts it in perspective. You had your great chart up there that we, of course, took a quick screenshot out and want to send out there, which is a way those 6 principles for ethical AI, and one of them is around combating bias. How we've seen early instances of how even a dispassionate computer can show elements of bias in terms of things like categorizing photos based upon certain qualities. Technologically, how do you build anti-bias into your programs, into AI?
That's a really, really good question and a very, very hard problem. So the biggest challenge you see with bias coming through in computer models, AI models, is that the data that was used to train that model to do something, in this case, classify pictures, was actually itself biased. That means that it did not represent all the different combinations of, let's say you're trying to do face recognition. You have to think about age, you have to think about gender, you have to think about other facial forms, like, somebody has a beard like me or not. You have to think about the color of the skin. And you have to think about sometimes, unique facial characteristics or deformities. And only when all this data has been presented to the computer model is it able to learn everything accurately. And what we are finding now is that most of the data that we have itself is not representative. So, if you are, let's say building a store like, these stores you're starting to see pop up where you walk in, pick up a product and walk out. Well, that's great. Unless you were not walking in, you came in on a wheelchair. That thing starts to break down because it was only trained with somebody with 2 legs walking in and picking up a product. So that is the fundamental problem with bias with AI models. Now, addressing bias in AI models is very hard because at the end of the day, AI models is a very, very complex mathematical equation. And you can't really go in and break it apart and say, okay, where is the bias? Let me go fix it. And also mathematically, there is something called closure. Closure is when you're able to assert that you actually have everything so that you can come up, make the right decisions. And you cannot actually get closure because it's an open-ended problem. Therefore, nowadays, the approach that is being used is, people are using adversarial techniques. And this is a new form of AI. In fact, some of the paintings that I showed you are actually created using that approach with AI, which is called generative adversarial networks. Basically, what happens is you've got 2 AI networks which are competing with each other. One is generating images. The other one is saying, does this look good or not? And they both sort of feed against each other eventually and help improve each other. Eventually, you get to the point where the combination of them is now producing this beautiful art. And you can kind of apply that towards bias as well. And you could imagine one network which is trained to say, is this thing biased or not? And the other network which is just able to come up with inferences. And that working against each other is one approach that is being used for bias. There's some other approaches as well. I showed you some examples of this virtual synthetic environment. The good thing about the virtual synthetic environment is that I can take one image and I can create literally 1 million variations of that image in software. And if I can, take my real world data and create 1 million variations of it, my models are going to inherently be a lot more robust. So those are some of the approaches that I use with bias. But there's a lot of attention on it now, which I feel great about.
I was trying to avoid asking this question, but I've just got too many people that are interested in it, which of course is, we look out at George Washington University. They've got new technologies about using light instead of electricity to process the self-learning components of AI, which of course is just increasing the speed exponentially. When do the robots take over, and and what are we doing to really draw the line between those things that humans should be in charge of and capable and dedicated to doing, and where do we draw the line on how powers we put in the hands of artificial intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and I think the way I would approach it is that, AI is a tool that can be used and can be misused. And the only way, like anything else in the past that we've seen, as humanity, if you have something that can be used or misused, you have to use other methods to make sure that something is not misused. And this is where a lot of policy, a lot of governance, a lot of active response, etc., has to be there. And I think at some level there has to be some level of defense as well. We live in a world which is, only this much of the world is in our quote unquote control. Like if you live inside the United States, I mean, the laws of the country govern what happens inside the United States. But what we're also learning now is that, the boundaries of our country are porous, and we can have foreign agents who can come in and create lots of issues. And we're starting to see that, everything from ransomware to you're seeing that everywhere, everything in our life. And I think that's because our policies and our systems are not keeping up with the evolution of technology. And I think if there is one caution I would say is that I think we better get our act together. AI is not going to stop evolving. It is evolving very fast. It is evolving fueled by capitalism at this point, so nothing's going to hold it back. But what needs to keep up? And I don't think anybody should hold it back, because if we hold it back, I can tell you the enemies of this country are not holding it back. So they're going to keep pushing it forward. So you got to keep pace with them. But you have to also keep pace on policy and regulations and so on. And I think this is the area, if there's one thing I worry about, it is not that AI is going to go rogue by itself. No, it's not going to go rogue. It's going to go rogue when rogue agents take AI and co-opt it for malintent. And I think we have to protect ourselves with everything that we can bring to bear against that.
Gurdeep Singh Pall, thank you so much for sharing all of that great information today. We've got a lot of folks that want to have you back to talk about deep learning when you're and quantum computing when you have a chance. So, absolutely fantastic presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. My pleasure. I'm sorry about the technical issues we had during the presentation.
Not a problem. We really appreciate all of your participation here today. And if you've not registered for next week's program, you can do so right now. Or excuse me, not next week's program. We're actually taking a break next week. We will be back up on the following week with a fantastic program on the healthcare revolution with David Vigano from Sensoria Health. So please make sure that you get registered for that right now. Please make sure you get registered for next week's program with John Arthur Wilson, the King County Assessor. And don't forget to tag us on social media at Bellevue Chamber for your chance to be featured at the August 7th program. Again, want to thank our presenting sponsor, Amazon, our major sponsors, AT&T, Microsoft, Puget Sound Energy, King County, and the City of Bellevue for making this series possible. And I want to go ahead now and move to what we do every week before we break off the program, and that is to raffle off an Amazon Dot provided to us by, of course, Amazon. So I'm going to go ahead and spin the wheel and see who's going to win an Amazon Dot this week. It looks like Paul M is our big winner this week. Our staff will go ahead and get you that Dot very quickly. Congratulations. Again, if you want an opportunity to win a Dot, make sure you register for the 7th program on the 7th. Until then, stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you back here next week.